All right. Hello and welcome, and everybody. It is a beautiful Wednesday afternoon in mid-Missouri. This is the 9th episode of the Blake and Jake Show on KCOU 88.1 FM. I am Blake Wallace, your host, joined by my co-host and great friend, Jake Aaron.
Hello, hello.
In today's show, Jake and I go over a tidal wave of free agency in the NFL. Who won free agency? And who did it? That is right around the corner. Our own mock draft is soon to debut, but today, and a lot of the things that are changing this week are going to make us have to make improvements on that NFL draft coming up your way. Next, we take fans to Saturday night in Miami, where Dustin the Diamond Poirier and Sugar Sean O'Malley came away victorious and in fantastic fashion. Finally, the Blake and Jake Show saves the best for last as the Mizzou men's Tiger team rounded out their conference play completely winless, 0-18. Only one other SEC team in the modern era has ever done this. The 2018-2019 Vanderbilt Commodores. Now, we're going to compare those teams and ultimately decide who had the better winless team. Was it the 2018-2019 Commodores, or was it this year's Mizzou Tigers? Just a little bit of fun there to round out this episode. Think you know who has the better team? Stick around and hear all the evidence for yourself at the bottom of the hour. You can find the Blake and Jake Show on Spotify and YouTube at the Blake and Jake Show. And if you want to follow around on Instagram, that is the Blake and Jake Show, no spaces. Jake, go ahead and take it away with the sports news update.
Thank you so much, Blake. Former Notre Dame quarterback Drew Pine transfers to Missouri. Though he won't compete with Brady Cook for a starting job this year, Pine expects to be the lead candidate when Cook leaves Mizzou. Pine didn't play last season, but he's been working out 5 days a week with a trainer. He'll come to Mizzou with 3 years eligibility left.
Yeah, everything I hear says that Drew Pine has a real chance to be competing for that starting job, not this year, but next year. And what a great backup for Brady Cook this year. So I like the move for Mizzou. I like the move for Drew Pine. It seems smart getting in there right behind a great quarterback and trying to carry on the condition.
Yeah, moving on. There have been many NFL signings over the last few days. I know we'll get into it a little bit later, but I'd like to highlight just some of the biggest deals. Excuse me. So Kirk Cousins signed with the Falcons, Saquon Barkley signed with the Eagles, Josh Jacobs signed with the Packers, Derrick Henry signed with the Ravens, Russell Wilson signed with the Steelers, and Christian Wilkins signed with the Raiders. Blake, outside of Kirk Cousins, which one of these signings will make the biggest impact with their new team?
I really liked Wilkins to the Raiders because the Raiders have seemed kind of rudderless for some time. Now they've got Pierce, their new head coach, and he goes out and gets himself a defensive player, a defensive stopper right there, and that's what stops the runs there for that team. That defense is going to be Wilkins now at that tackle position, and that just allows them to work from there to stop the run. Now you get to worry about stopping the pass, and on offense, making your run team just a little bit better than your opponents. It all starts with stopping the run first, and I think that's what the Raiders were able to do. And despite it being a pretty hefty contract, it's one that is solid for both parties.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that. Moving on Saturday, Luka Doncic became the first player in NBA history to record 6 straight 30-point triple-doubles, breaking Russell Westbrook's streak of 5 consecutive 30-point triple-doubles. Against the Bulls on Monday, Luka finished with 27 points, 12 rebounds, and 14 assists in 3.5 quarters, which ended his streak. But Blake, my question for you is, what more can Luka Doncic do to individually sway your MVP vote in his favor?
That's a great question because the numbers are off the charts, but the numbers have been off the charts for the last few years. So what more does Luka have to do to win an MVP? And you look at some of the people who have won the MVP in the last few years, whether it be Giannis or even more so Jokic, who will likely win again this year. And so you use that as your measuring stick right there. The difference is the wins. I mean, both Giannis and the Bucks and Jokic and the Denver Nuggets, they've been both highly successful on highly successful teams. Now, right now, Luka Doncic has crossed off the part about being highly successful. Now, can he do it on a highly successful team? It likely has to go by Doncic in this medium. I don't see that as being capable for this year, getting into that MVP race. It's up to Luka and the rest of that coaching staff to figure out how to get him into the MVP race next year, because simply put, his numbers are MVP level.
Right, the numbers are, but the wins are not at all. So hopefully, if not this year, as a Mavs fan, hopefully next year they can get those wins up and get him more in the conversation.
And that is Jake with the sports news update. Thank you so much, Jake.
Of course.
And also moves us into our very first topic of the day: who won and who lost free agency. Now, there's going to be quite the opinions out there, and I expect those. So we're going to go ahead and start with one of the bigger deals of the week, and that is Kirk Cousins. $180 million, $100 million guaranteed to the Atlanta Falcons. This makes him the second highest paid quarterback in total earnings over a career. And ironically, I think he could top one, because this deal is great, but it possibly leaves room for another quarterback deal if Cousins is able to stay healthy. But I continue. Kirk Cousins was the belle of the ball for this year's free agency period. The Vikings obviously wanted him back, but Atlanta Falcons had a little bit more to give and were willing to go a little bit more out of the way, which is interesting because Kirk Cousins is coming off an Achilles injury. A few years ago, that might have deadened any free agency interest coming from any team of a 30, 35-plus-year-old quarterback. But now, just a few years removed, that is no problem for any of these NFL teams. It felt like that was just a footnote in the Kirk Cousins discussion. And, of course, I don't think that Kirk Cousins is the only one that won out of this. The Atlanta Falcons, previously running with Desmond Ridder, was not a starting quarterback in the NFL. In fact, the NFC South was home to the worst group of NFL quarterbacks of any division, and Desmond Ridder was the worst in their division. So certainly a need for Atlanta over really any other team in the NFL. That's why they're willing to give just a little bit more than every other team. This allows them now to attack a weaker division. That's why this is so powerful for Atlanta Falcons. And also, now that eighth pick is freed up, there is no interest in using that for a quarterback anymore. It frees them up to go get a playmaker that'll help them right now, whether that's on the offensive end. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and hint. I guessed that Kirk Cousins would be going with the Atlanta Falcons on our mock draft. I had Rome Odunze going to the Atlanta Falcons as kind of a 1-2 punch that they could get in. Now, I know Darnell Mooney and a very good receiver from Chicago goes to Atlanta as well. I don't see them exactly pulling out of that need. Rome Odunze is a totally different wide receiver and one that could add a new aspect to that Atlanta Falcons team. But maybe they go out and get a pass rusher too. They could probably get the best, if not the second best pass rusher on the board at that number 8 spot there. And that'll move us into our second one, the losers. And this one's going to hurt me just a little bit here, but it's without a doubt the Denver Broncos. We're just going to go through a list of their releases, and then we'll talk about their acquisitions. Release Russell Wilson, Justin Simmons, their center from LSU, Lloyd Cushenberry III, Josie Jewell, that will be signing with the Cardinals on a 2-year deal. It's not looked good and really haven't gotten anything in return. There was a safety from the Dolphins and a defensive tackle, but I mean, right now, there are multiple teams with no additions in the first 48 hours of free agency. I didn't pick any of those teams because none of those teams are paying $38 million to not have a quarterback in the room. It's going to be tough sledding for Denver, just recollecting all of the talent that they've let go in the last few years and coming back with a little something new, Jake.
Yeah, I mean, they're like you said, they're down $85 million just to not have Russell Wilson. They don't really have a top quarterback in line for next season. Well, they do have a draft pick. That'll hopefully come in handy for them. But I would not want to be a Broncos fan right now.
Yeah, and in fact, one of the few teams that are struggling with cap issues while also struggling with not having enough skill at least 10, 11, 12 positions on their roster to really create a competitive team, and that's in one of the worst divisions, the AFC West, which is only getting tougher. We talked about the Raiders and what they're doing and what they're building over there in Las Vegas. That moves us into a winner. We need a winner because that was quite depressing. And that moves us into the running back market, which got a well-needed rain this year. The state of the running back market has been a fascinating problem with seemingly no real answer. The NFL boosting the cap, though, up $30 million from last year, may have just been that answer that nobody found, as it seems like these teams are willing to flirt a little bit more with going out and getting some better talent at the running back position, taking a little bit of risk, putting a little bit more down in that money guaranteed portion, and coming out with some big big turnouts, and that's really what it's been. We've been wondering what is it that takes this running back market into we're gonna kind of skim it a little bit to now we're gonna fully invest because nobody else is. It feels like a few teams said, hey, we get $30 million more to work with this year. Let's put it into that market. It certainly has done. What was your favorite pickup from that running market trade there?
Ooh, my favorite pickup for the running market? I'm not too sure, but I just want to throw out a number here real quick. So there have been 13 running backs who've signed a deal so far, and they've gotten a total of $200 million. The 13 running backs who got paid most last season were made a total of $102 million. So it's safe to say that the running backs are winners so far in this free agency.
That's astronomically different from where it was last year and previous years before that. And I've got to say, I really like Saquon Barkley to the Eagles. It's in division, so it's nasty, it's dirty, but he's also just has so much left in the tank. Some injuries have kept him aside, but Philadelphia Eagles should be maximizing that talent next year. That brings us into our final loser of the free agency period. It's another team. It's the Carolina Panthers. The Carolina Panthers haven't made terrible free agent moves. They've invested in 2 guards. I've liked both of the guards. Robert Hunt gets $1 million, 63 guaranteed. That's huge. It's a little bit too flamboyant for me. Yet Damian Lewis, that's a great pickup there with 53 million, 26 guaranteed. There's not a lot of top-end talent in the NFL draft for guard positions. Now, can you move a few tackles into the guards? Yes, you can. Yet, when we're talking about just pure guards, there just wasn't a lot here. So a lot of these teams you could see kind of decided to go ahead and invest in that in the free agency market rather than the NFL draft. I think that's a clever move. And I had Carolina as one of the neediest for any offensive line members, but specifically a guard. But letting go of Brian Burns, going to New York Giants for a 4th and a 6th round pick. They let a wide receiver go to Chicago and got nothing in return. And, of course, they don't have their 1st round pick this year because that is also Chicago's. They just haven't done a great job of giving themselves these high-value assets and using them because Brian Burns was a high-value asset last year. Their wide receivers were high-value assets, and that 1st round pick, it's a high-value asset. They gave it up for Bryce Young. Now they're trying to make it all work. And simply put, firing a coach every year or two has not really been a healthy, successful venture for the Carolina Panthers. They're simply in it this year. They paid for the guards. It seems like maybe kind of getting a little bit of their mind right, understanding we're going to protect our quarterback, maybe go after and get some people that are going to go after your quarterback in the NFL draft. Yet, they put themselves so behind the 8 ball, that just makes them a loser of the free agents period in my book.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. With their 2-15 record, last year, they don't have that 1st round pick like you said. And I know hindsight's 2020, but it was reported that they apparently turned down 2 1st round picks last year for Burns from the Rams, which means that they didn't get as much as they could have.
Yeah, that's on the front office of the Carolina Panthers, and yikes. All right, that moves us into our very first commercial break. Thank you so much for listening to the Blake and Jake Show. It's been an absolute honor. On the other side of this break, we talked UFC. Sugar Sean, Dustin Poirier, both were spectacular, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what is next for those 2 fighters on the other side of this quick break.